Hello. Right. This is going to be a bit of an experiment. Any of you that used to watch me about a year ago when I first started doing live streams will know that I used to do a combined, a simultaneous live stream on Facebook and YouTube. And I'm just going to try doing it today just as a bit of an experiment. And so I've got it going out to both. So you'll have to forgive me if I don't see any questions or anything like that, because I'm going to be nipping between both of them. Now, I know that the YouTube stream usually ends up getting a lot more people there, so I'll be on that mainly. If you have any problems on either side, just switch over to the other one. So if you're on Facebook and you start getting any kind of glitches. I'm watching the dropped frames up at the top there. We've not had any so far, but any of you that used to come and watch me will know that it used to get a load of dropped frames and it used to just fall apart, and then we just used to stop. So if that starts happening, look at my hair, it looks a right mess. Then just switch over to the other one. I might look a bit worse for wear today. Our two kids, Abigail and Isabel, they've both been really ill this week, so I've had many a late night. I've been up since 4 o'clock this morning, so I'm a bit worse for wear. So good to see you all. So we've got about 30 on Facebook. How many have we got here on about 37 on YouTube. So what I'm going to do is do a little bit of a lesson on one of the slap riffs that I have in the slap bass course. I was just messing around with it earlier on, and I thought, well, I've never shown that. I don't think. Oh, I have shown it on a previous video, but I'll go over it because there's a few little things in there that are quite useful. Any of you that saw the what was it? The one that I was doing the other day, the Les Claypool one with all the strummed chords in it. This has got some chords in there as well. I'll have to see if I can remember the damn thing. So, hold on, let me see if I can remember it. Good start. That's it. Sound is terrible at the moment. Is that really trebly to everybody? That sounds really trebly to me. Bit weird. That's passive. It's really weird. Good start from me. Riff that I was going to do and messing it up. So that's the riff. So what I'm going to do is sort of go through a couple of the little things in there that are quite useful when you're trying to learn it. Just before I do, let me just see who we've got here. So, a lot of the good old favourites. I've not done one on YouTube for ages, so it's nice to see you all again. I cut down on the YouTube ones, as a lot of you know, because it starts taking away from the rest of the channel. But every now and then, I'll just I'll just slot one in. It's the usual mob on YouTube. Thanks, Ricky. Hello, everybody. Do some Halloween cover songs. Oh, yeah, we're coming up to Halloween now, aren't we? Yeah. I have the best name here. Yeah, Poopy Face. Yeah, that's a good name. Right, cool. So we've got a few there. Like I say, I'm having to switch between the two here. Just checking for dropped frames. None yet. Ah, Dave there. I never see any announcements about the live streams. Do you send out email announcements? I do sometimes. I just didn't today. I was debating whether I was going to do it or not because the weather's been really bad here. We've got a big storm coming in, and everything's going a little bit weird with the power and the internet connection. So I was very, very undecided just up until a couple of minutes ago, and then I thought, nah, I'll go for it. Just see who's around. So there's a few of you here. So cool. Now I'll just get through this little riff and show you what I'm doing. So it's in A. So the first thing we've got there, I won't take it apart note by note like I do with the lessons because we'll be here forever. But so I'll just go through it again. I'll go passive just because it's very, very trebly. So that first part, I'm playing that open A string. Let me just pull back a bit so you can see what I'm doing here. Well, the first thing is that I'm hitting that open A string. Now, a lot of people, a lot of my students, when they've tried learning to play slap, have had problems with slapping the A string. You know, because you've got to be a little bit more accurate than you are when you go for the E string. Because when you go for the E string, there's nothing below it, unless you're on a 5 string or a 6 string. But you can just sort of grab your thumb and just go whack. You know, you can see that I'm not looking, you just whack, whack, whack. You kind of hit it. But with the A string, you've got to be a little bit more accurate. So if you ever have problems trying to slap an A string, here's the big tip. Look at the string. Look where you're playing, right? Because I've noticed people start playing, you know, like they'll be playing something there. And they start missing the string, you know, and hitting the E string or the D string or hitting the wood between. And it's because they're looking at that hand. Because when you play bass, when you start out, you start looking at that hand because you're thinking notes. You know, what notes am I going to play? So you've got like, oh, I'm going to play a C, or I'm going to play a G. You know, I'm going to, well, maybe not with an open string, but you're thinking, oh, there's an F, okay. Or even if you're just thinking of frets, you might be thinking 3rd fret, 5th fret, 3rd fret, 5th fret, you know, that kind of thing. So you're looking at that hand because you're so preoccupied with notes. But it's this hand that you really need to be thinking about, because this hand doesn't really... You know, a lot of the time on bass lines, you're not actually doing that much with this hand. You know, a lot of bass lines, you just, you know, you might be just sat there. So when you start slapping with this hand, watch where you're hitting the string, right? So if I'm going to hit the A string, I might look down, pick a spot. So there's a spot at the end of it. And you don't have to bring the arm out here like this or anything like that. Just thumb there. And just slap it, you know. The same goes for if you're picking, you know. But get a spot and aim for it, right? So that's the first tip. So I'm hitting this open A, and then instantly I'm going into sort of Les Claypool territory with a strum. So this is basically a A7 chord, but we're down here. So we've got the open A, and then I'm kind of using 2 fingers, actually, to strum it like that. So if I get back a bit further so you can see. In fact, hold on. I was chatting to someone on the webcam the other day, and I ended up bringing it up a little bit. That's better, isn't it? So, so you can see the hand is kind of in this. I mean, some people will do it like that. But I find that when I'm doing it, when I'm just slapping here like this, the fingers are just there ready. So I'm just barring that G and that C there, 5th fret of the D and G string. And then I'm just hammering on to that 10th up there, or the 3rd. So that's the 6th fret. So 5th fret to 6th fret. And it gives you that nice little bluesy kind of thing that you get where if you're playing, well, if I was playing it up here. So It's that minor third to major third thing that you get over a dominant 7. If you didn't know anything about that, if you're ever playing over a dominant 7 chord, be it in a blues or a funk kind of thing, you know, that minor third to major third always sounds pretty cool. So you get that. God, the sound on this thing at the moment is horrendous. What's going on? Hold on. Don't know. So we've got those two things. So I mean, that's 2 tips to start off with. You know, aim where you're going with your thumb, and then we've got that little thing there, okay? Next bit of the riff there, we've got this little F sharp to G, so this major 6 up to the minor 7, and that again is a really, really popular little, you get that in loads and loads of slap lines. So, you know, if I was playing up here, if we're in E, so you get that, where are we? So we've got that, yeah. So it's there. You'll get that loads. So if you ever want to get that sound, or you hear that sound in something, that's that major 6th in there. So yeah, so we've got that. Can you hear how that sounds? Again, there's some I've got some little ghost notes in there. But again, I'm not going to go through every note in this. It's all there in the slap course, but I just thought that there were a few little things in here that were worth pointing out. Again, when I get to this bit, it's got that kind of almost like a country kind of vibe about it, or blues, I don't know. So that, remember, we're over an A7 there. It's 5th to the 6th, 5th to the major 6th. Again, we've got that major 6th in there. That kind of move is very common in soul kind of tunes. You know, that kind of, you know, root note dropping down to the 5th, coming up to the 6th. Someone was coming in. You know, you get that all the time. So, again, where are we? There it is. Right, so now we drop down to this. We're in Mark King territory with this, because we've got these 10ths, which he uses a lot. So, if you've never used a 10th before, so this is a major 10th, it's just a third pattern, you know, little third, but spread out over over 2 octaves. So we've got the G there, 3rd fret of the E string, and then the B there, 4th fret of the G string. So that gives you that nice little chord. It's nicer having it a compound interval like that, where you've got the 3rd up on the top, because if I was to play it down here, it sounds rubbish. Whenever you play little chords like that down low, you know, that's a nice interval if I was to play it up here, but down here, awful. So take that B up an octave, you know, you'll get that all the time in these slap things. It's a nice way of getting chords low down. Okay, so that bit, where are we? Very standard kind of little move there, just coming up a minor pentatonic, or well, it's not even a scale, it's just 2 intervals, it's just 5th fret to 7th fret on the A, D and G string. So slap, hammer on, pop, hammer on. You know, that kind of move where you move in between the 4th and the 5th of the scale, or intervals, and then the minor 7th to the octave are very popular in slapping. So if I'm over an A like we're playing there, you know, that kind of, you get that all the time. Like I say, you know, in those kind of licks, get it all the time. So, yep, so there we are. Then we've got this cool little move where we have, so we've got this little repeated note there. So I'm playing the G there, 5th fret of the D string twice, and then I'm playing a cross hammer. Now, if you don't know what that is, I'm not slapping the E there. So I'm playing G, G, E, E. So that'd be if I was to slap the 2 notes. By the way, forgive me if I'm not looking at any of your comments at the moment. I can't see any of them. I'm just working through this riff. So we've got slap on the, I've done 2 slaps on the G there, 5th fret of the D string. Then I hammer on at the 7th fret of the A string. See? So it's the hammer on, out of nowhere. And then I slap that. So it's a way of getting these little, like more of a run kind of thing out of a slap line. So. Okay. Then I'm back up with the, when I come back to the G, I'm popping the G and then slapping the G, which gives us, which again is a cool little thing to be able to do on slap lines. You know, because it's sometimes difficult to get a lot of double notes in there. I mean, I know I'm doing the pop there on that first one, but on, you know, when I play in the riff, I actually slap twice because I'm playing a pop just before it. But then I hammer on, and then up to the C up at the top. So that's a cool little line. All of these little little fragments that you can get from these riffs like this, you can just take them apart. You know, you get a little fragment like that and then just mess around with it, put it in something else that you're doing. So in the riff, it's not too fast. I mean, probably a bit faster than that, but you know, when you know, if you just mess around with that, you can just move it around and, you know, Bob's your uncle, so. So there, I come back to my tenths. See how cool they sound. You get them in so many things. You'll hear them in lots and lots of kind of slap lines. You get them in loads of things. So yeah, so that's that slap riff. There you go. So a few little tips in there from doing that riff. I'm just thinking, what was the last thing that I did on the on YouTube? Oh yeah, I did that little. Just in case anybody's not seen, I did a lesson yesterday. Released a lesson for on YouTube that's called the Not So Simple bass line. So I don't know if any of you have seen that yet. If you've not, go check it out. It's a really, really simple bass line, or what sounds like a simple bass line. It's the kind of thing that I'd give a student and they'd go, "Oh, what are you giving me that for? Why can't I play some flea or Les Claypool?" And and then you get them to play it, and then they mess it all up. Or play it, but play it with a lot of things missing from there. The riff that I played was, let me think. You have to forgive the fret buzz at the moment. All this weather sent the truss rod out again. So ignore the move down to the B flat to the B. The main gist of this is that it's just playing around on a... Okay, so that sounds so easy, right? But it's not. It's, well, it is, but it's just that if you're not used to thinking in terms of muting and note duration, most importantly, and, you know, if you're not very good at ghost notes, that kind of bass line can really screw you up. Because if you were to play it like this... You know, that... all right, fair enough. That's, you know, it works as a bass line. But listen to the difference. Okay, so we've got the notes being cut off. So I've got... I'm letting the snare breathe when it gets around to the snare. Not that I've got the drum track here or anything, but if there was drums, boom, chick, boom, chick. We've got... So I'm cutting that note off. And that provides all the momentum in the bass line. Okay, hear the difference. When I play it with the notes held through, or let's say I get rid of the ghost notes. See, very, very laid back, which you might want. You know, if you were playing a ballad or something like that, then that'd be fine. But if you're wanting a little bit more momentum, just by cutting that note off. And then if I wanted to make it really agitated and really, really with a lot of drive, you're actually creating a little bit more tension with the staccato side of it. So the key to all of that is note control, you know, and it's one of the things that, I mean, to be honest, you gain that with a little bit, you know, just over time with playing. But it's, you know, if you follow all that stuff I talk about with the home position, you know, where I've got my hand in that position to begin with, you can see that it makes all of that a lot easier. Now, I'm not going to just go on about that. I just wanted to introduce it to you in case you've not seen that video. But that came out yesterday. So, oh my God, the rain's kicking in. So that's all on there. If you're interested in any of that, just go check that out. Also, that riff, that's on the Simple Steps to Slap Bass course. So if you're interested in slapping, go check that out at the Talkingbass website. So let me see how we're doing with all these comments. As per usual, the YouTube one's going crazy. I'm just on. I've been on the Facebook one. Let me just see who's here. Hey, Ian. It's one of my old students from long, long ago. Yeah, 20 years ago. Guys, 20 years. It's more than 20 years ago. Oh, no, it is 20 years ago. Yeah. And Ian's a cool bass player as well. I'm just running through these ones quick. So at the moment, I'm on the Facebook one. This is the problem. This is why I do one, not both, because it ends up being a little bit, back and forward. There's Brian. Yeah, please send announcements when you go live. I like I said, I do normally. It's just that today it was just an off-the-cuff thing. And to be honest, I wasn't really looking to do like a long lesson thing or a big Q&A or anything like that. Like I said, we've got a big storm here. So power's sort of going off in different places. And we've got, starting to kick in right now. We're in the middle of that. But it's that hurricane that's come across that's we're getting the last... Well, it's not a hurricane, that's for sure. But it's the latter end of it, apparently. The staccato eighth note is the hardest part for me. Yeah, that's one of the parts. So that's Dave there. When you get back round to it, so... That. It's getting used to being able to play... Da-da, ba-bam. And... What I just did there, doing it with the voice, is actually quite useful sometimes. Being able to actually sing the bass line that you want, to internalize the bass line that you want. So that can help with actually getting it out of the instrument, because at least you've got it there internalized. If it's just some sound in your mind or something on a recording or something like that you're trying to achieve, it's not internalized. It's separate. Whereas if you've got something like bump, ba-bump, bump, bump, ba-bum, bump, if you can just sing it, I know that's just a, and the difference between bam, ba-bum, bam, bam, ba-bum, bam, or bum, ba-bum, bum, you're actually creating those differences in the actual note duration yourself with your voice. So when it comes to doing it with the hands, because it's already there, you can get it out a lot easier. Does that make sense? I find that can be, quite useful. Just singing bass lines. Even if you're crap at singing, which I am. When you post the weekly lesson, are the previous lessons archived somewhere? Only 4 show up in the member area dashboard. Oh yeah, they're all in the lesson map. If you go into the lesson map on Talkingbass, I always assume that's the main place that everybody goes when they go to the to Talkingbass. But go to the lesson map, and every lesson I've ever done is in there. And they're all categorized and systemized. So if you want slap bass lessons, there's a ton of slap bass lessons. If you want chord lessons, tapping, walking bass lines, reading, whatever it is, it's all in there, with different categories. And then you just click on those little pluses, the little toggles, and it'll show you all the lessons. There's about 200 lessons in there. So yeah, they're all in there. It's funny you should say that though, because I am in the process, as probably most of you know if you've just been to the website recently, I'm kind of changing a lot of things around, trying to make it look a little bit better. Because like Talkingbass is just me. There's nobody else. It's just me. So all the all the website, all the video recording, all the editing, encoding, marketing, advertising, blah, 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 blah. It's all me. There's nobody else involved. It's not like SBL where there's like an army of people. It's just me. So sometimes things take a little bit longer to do, but I'm trying to change the website around a little bit. So I think it's in all the lessons, the blog kind of lessony things, the YouTube lessons where they get embedded each time. I'm making some big changes there. I'm going to add a lot more information. I'm also going to make it so that you don't have to download the drum tracks every time. I'm going to have them embedded there on the page. So then you don't have to download it. And then, because then what happens is that if you've got an iPad or a phone and you're doing it, you end up downloading zip files and then you got to unzip them. And then that's a nightmare, whether you're on Android or iOS. And then you've got to unzip the folder. And then you've got to find where it's put it. It's a nightmare. So all the stuff that I put on there, I'm actually going to embed. So there's actually going to be the sheet music or tab or whatever is going to be there. You're going to be able to play the drum beat. I've done it on the last two lessons. You'll see the drum track there. You can just press play, and then you can practice to it. So, yeah. Do. Thanks, Lars. And IT Guru. No. I am not an IT guru. I just get by. I've got a bit of a background in it, but not much. Just enough to get by. What you see on Talkingbass is as good as it gets, really. I started out coding HTML and stuff back when the internet began, you know, back in the early 90s. And I used to program a little bit through the 80s. My dad bought me a Tandy TRS-80 color computer when I was about 1981 or 2 or something like that. And so I learned to program BASIC around that time. And then I'd learned a bit of C later on. And then HTML was obviously dead easy when that, when the net started up. And I was, so I did a bit, I went to college and did a bit of that before I started doing music, before I did a music course. Dropped out, as I always do, and then the music one I ended up sticking with. So, yeah. Drac Lewis, play something! We always get those kind of comments. I've just been playing a load. Right, so I'm moving across onto YouTube to see what the questions are on there. Because I know what's going to happen. Everybody's going to get cheesed off with me not answering the questions. Here we go. So many comments. I just have to sit there working through them. I have the same chair bought from office work. Yeah, it's cool. It's kind of like a gaming chair, isn't it? Tell us about yesterday's lesson. I just did, so that must have been a comment from a while back. What's better, 5 or 4 string? Do you know what? That's a question that gets asked all the time. I see so many YouTube videos and that where people are talking about 5 strings, and I've seen them on like different videos and mine. And it's like, what's better, 5 or 4 string? And there isn't. They're both completely different. It depends what you're wanting to use them for. Then neither's better. It depends what you're playing. If you've got to play something, if you're playing in a band where you need a 5 string, then a 5 string's better. I tend to use 4 string more than I do 5 because I just prefer 4, to be honest. I've had plenty of 5s, but that was mainly because I had to. Doing a lot of like theatre work and stuff like that, you're generally given parts that are written for 5 string bass. A lot of stuff gets written, there's a lot of stuff written for low B. So you'll end up being down here a lot, and there'll be like synthy bass lines. So if you can imagine something that would be like this, let's say an octave up, like... you can imagine something like that with a kind of synthy kind of vibe. But an octave lower, dum dum bum bum dum dum bum bum. Or you'll just get, the odd low note, like let's say on a ballad where you might be playing, and instead of it playing like a D up there or an E flat up there that sounds very light, it might be in the key of E flat. And let me just check what. Yeah. So if I use my D tuner, you can hear that E flat, that low E flat, you can imagine at the end of a tune that the last chord, rather than it being, that high E flat there, if I play the low E flat, it's a lot more useful. And the same goes for the D, But, there's a million and one different places where you might get them. Just in case anybody didn't know what I did there, that's a hipshot D tuner on the back. Whoops. Let me get it in shot. So it's back here. You can see this thing. I'm doing it the wrong way there. So when that drops me down to E flat. You can program it to whatever you want. So that's on an E flat now. I could have tuned it to a D or whatever. And it's just handy on a gig. If you're playing an old... if I'm, let's say that I'm, here I'm in E, so if I wanted to play that in E flat, oops, okay, so I've got that E flat down there, and then back up. So yeah, that's a Hipshot detuner. Okay, question. How can I avoid not hitting my other fingers on the bass while slapping? What you mean, these fingers? What when you... Let me see. So are you meaning other fingers on the strings, or do you mean on the body? I mean, I suppose... I'm not too sure without seeing what you're doing in terms of the, you know... Often you'll get questions on these things, and it's really difficult to answer them because everybody has their own kind of way of doing things. And then if I was to see you on, let's say it was even a Skype lesson, and I saw you, I'd be able to say, right, don't do that, move your hand there. I know that sometimes if I'm here, I suppose my fingers could knock into it, but no, or do you mean that they're banging on the strings? You shouldn't really be getting that happening. Just make sure that you just have to alter your hand position until the thing that you don't like is not happening. Can you tell us about the diminished scale, half whole, and in what chord we can use it? Thanks, bro. So that's it. It's an octatonic scale. It's an 8-note scale. And it's got a really cool little formula, actually. I'm on an E1 there. So it basically goes up half step, whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step. And you can use it over, obviously, over diminished chords, because you've got one in there. So you could use it over a diminished chord, over a diminished 7 chord even. But because of the way that the notes in there, you can actually use it over a dominant 7 chord. So there I'm over an E7. Okay, it sounds a lot darker and a lot more evil sounding. But if you were to think of it in terms of, I mean, yeah, this is going down a huge rabbit hole. But if you just think of the dominant 7 arpeggio, and actually because of the way that scale works, we get a lot of little altered extensions. So we've got the flat 9 in there, we've got the sharp 9 in there, sharp 9, you know, like Purple Haze or Foxy Lady or whatever. We've got the sharp 11, then we've got that normal major 6th, then we've got that flat 7 up there, and it's, I mean, basically, you've got a dominant 7 chord with some cool altered extensions. So I would think of that more in terms of chord tones and thinking of it as a dominant 7. And then just think of the individual altered extensions separately. And, you know, you can do things like take how would that work with this? I won't go down that rabbit hole too much, but basically you can use it over diminished 7 chords or dominant 7 chords. How many basses do you own? Not that many at the moment. I've got this. I've got a Fender Jazz, the Marcus Miller one. I've got the Fender Precision, which is over there. I've got a Kaylee U bass, which is there on top of there. I've got a 5-string Squire, which I might do a giveaway on at some point. And what else? I've got a fretless Jazz back there. There's some on there, see. I've got my old Westone Thunderjet kicking about somewhere. And what else have I got? I think that's it for now. I go through lots of different basses. I used to have a Music Man Stingray for years, 5-string, and I had a really cool ESP 5-string as well. I know that they sort of get the metal thing all the time, but or get associated with metal, but that wasn't at all. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it being associated with metal, but it was just that it was a very all-round kind of bass, which was cool. I play drums, piano, and bass. Right, okay, right. I'll just run through a few of these more questions, and then I'll jump back onto the Facebook thing. We're doing well, actually. We've not got any dropped frames. You'll have to forgive me if I jump ahead of some questions as well, because you know we get hammered with so many of the questions that I can't go through them all. I'll be on here until 4 o'clock our time here in the UK, which is in quarter of an hour, 15 minutes. So you know, I'll jump to the ones that I think will be good for answers. For my plucking hand, this is Nathan. Should I be using tips or pads to play? Well, the tip is kind of the pad, isn't it? But I think what you're meaning is should you play like that or like that? Now, that can be determined by the kind of tone that you're wanting to get. Because if you ever watch people like Steve Harris, you'll notice that they're kind of hammering down, and you'll get more of that clanky. You get more of that kind of sound. If you have the hand, so that's with the hand kind of flat, and I'm kind of hitting with the pads. If I bring the wrist over a little bit, so that's more of a straight wrist actually. But if I'm playing more like that, you won't get as much of the clank. I mean, you will if you hit it hard. And then if you were to take that back here, you get more of that funky kind of sound. So it kind of depends what you're going for, really, and how much you've blistered up on the other part. Having trouble deciding between a Fender Jazz and an SR300. Now, I know that I'm playing an Ibanez right here, and, you know, I've got nothing against Ibanezes. I like Ibanezes, but my go-to bass for gigging is the Fender Jazz. I know that is one of those basses that will fit into any kind of setting. So if I've got multiple different styles to cover, or it's, you know, if I just need one bass on a gig, I know that I'm sorted with that Jazz. So that might be something bearing in mind. The Ibanez is very easy to play. This is one of those things where if I'm playing, you know, that kind of thing, or whatever, whatever it is, that's a little bit more frenetic, or, you know, moving around all over the place, I'd go with the Ibanez just because it's got a faster neck and it's got 24 frets, you know, so it's, you know, it's easier for playing, you know, if I'm wanting to play that kind of chord, you know, I wouldn't be able to play on a Jazz, you know. So yeah, but I very rarely do anything like that anyway. This is an SR1000, by the way. I bought this in 1992. Can you talk about the key sensor using the 3-finger major positions to execute bass lines and melodies on the bass? Okay, I'll cover that very briefly in a second. Let me just see how many more I've got in here. Oof, there's so many questions down here. I've kind of shot myself in the foot with this, actually doing this in the Facebook one at the same time. Let me just switch back to Facebook and just check whether there's anything standing out. Just 4-string, but switch to a 5-string because I have short fingers, and a 5-string lets me avoid wide stretches. Plus, I don't have to transcribe cello music up an octave. Yep, that's one upside to that. But I don't tend to, well, I mean, if you've got 24 frets, you don't really have to worry about that with the cello stuff anyway. Like that detuner. Yeah, the detuner is really, really handy. The detuner is really handy, especially for if you're wanting to slap anything and you want in an open and you want an E flat on the bottom, because if you play an E flat on a 5 string on the 5th fret, it just doesn't have that same sound. There's a certain sound to slapping an open string. So if I'm going, if I was to play that on a 5, if I'd got my 5 here and I played that as boom, and then played the 5th fret of the B string, boom, it just wouldn't sound the same. There's a certain sound you get from that open string. So, and it just doesn't, you know, play the same. Whereas if I'm playing with that E flat there, see, so it's instantly got that open sound. See, so you know it's really handy for that. It's a hip shot detuner. If you watch Michael Manring, he's got 4 of them on his bass. He switches between them. Hi, Layla. That's Ian's daughter. Do you forget how to play bass lines? This is Sean. Do you forget how to play bass lines if you haven't played them in a while, or are they etched permanently into the muscle memory? No, I forget them all the time. That's why people ask me to play certain bass lines on here, and I'm like, you saw me earlier on do it. You know that. I mean, that's one I wrote. That's for the course. You wouldn't think that I'd mess that up, but I did. It's like loads of them. There's a few that stick in my mind that instantly come to be fair, if it's a really popular riff, if I can sing it, I can generally play it. You know, because it's, you know, if your ear's developed enough and you can sing the thing, you should be able to do it. But especially something easy. You know, if somebody said, oh, play You Really Got Me, you know, nobody should have a problem figuring that one out. But there's a few that always come to mind. Like, I remember when I very first started playing, I learned... Black Knight by Deep Purple, and that I'll never, you know, that will never go. If somebody said Black Knight by Deep Purple, you know, I'd get it. It'd be like, you know. So yeah, there's a few like that, but I mean, oh god, the number of songs that you end up learning when you're playing various bands. Especially if you're doing it as a living, you know, and you're just having to play in whatever band, you know. So you might be learning disco tunes or soul tunes or jazz tunes or whatever it is. You know, you learn a bunch of them. You know, I mean, most of you have probably played in bands where you learn a set. You know, you've got a set for a gig that's coming up. Well, imagine if you're playing in one band one week and you've got a certain set to learn, and then you're playing another band another week, you got another set to learn, you know, and then you play in another band that's very similar to the one that you've just played in. So let's say it's a disco band. You know, you're playing with a stupid wig and everything, right? So you go and play in that band, and you'll learn a load of songs like Young Hearts Run Free and you know, I Want You Back, or whatever it is, right? And then you'll come to play another band like that. You know, somebody says, all right, okay, well, can you do this gig next week? And then you go and do the gig, and it's a lot of the same songs, but with some extras added in there. And so gradually over a period of time, you start adding all these into your repertoire. But to be honest, after a while, you forget. You especially forget like keys and things like that. And stuff just doesn't fall under your fingers as well. So you'll often see me, if somebody asks for a song on here, you know, not that I'm in the business of doing requests, but if somebody says, oh, what's how such and such a song go, and then I'm thinking, and even if it's a really popular song, I have to sometimes sit there and think and kind of sing it to myself, and then I'll get it, because you just forget it. Even if I've played it 100 times, I might have forgot it. You know, I've been playing a long time. There's a lot of songs to forget, you know. But yeah, so that's forgetting bass lines. So don't feel any shame about forgetting bass lines, because everybody does it. Although, that said, if you're in a band, this happened to me recently. You'll have seen that cruise vlog that I did recently. So that was the first cruise gig I'd done in, like, 4 years? So I went on there, and it was, you get hammered with a lot of tunes, so there's a lot of them that you have to busk, so they'll just call tunes out willy-nilly. You'll be reading certain ones, but then there'll be requests and things. And I was a little bit nervous when I did it because I'd not done it for so long, and I was thinking, oh man, I hope my repertoire's still up to scratch, because 10 years ago I'd have had no problem. I was playing that many things all the time that I could just fit in any band, and if somebody called a tune out, I'd be fine. But I was thinking, God, I hope I remember all the bits, because it's not about getting the notes right necessarily, because you can do that if your ear's good enough. It's getting the form right, and it's communication, really, because different bands do different things. They might have different forms, so you're having to watch people. And I was quite happy, and not surprised, but I was quite happy to find that it's like riding a bike. I just got back on, and it just flows out. It all just comes flooding back. So sometimes you just have to rely on that. You just have to have faith in that side of your, playing, that it'll just come flooding back. Mark, any recommendations in strings for durability? Not really. I just mess around with as many different ones as I can. I do tend to use DRs quite a lot, and I've just bought some new Super Brights, the Jim Dunlop ones, which are really good. So they're my 2 strings of choice. I think a lot of people like Elixirs for durability. Right, so that's the questions there on Facebook. Let me just get back to like I say, I'm only going to be here for another 5-10 minutes. Right, so let me come back up through these. You only look about 25, Mark. I don't think. Not after last night. Christ. I was, I don't know if it's the light. You can't see the bags under my eyes. We've been getting up very early this week. They've had a really bad cold of the kids. They've been like coughing their guts up, waking up like 5-6 times a night, and then come 4 o'clock they're awake, and that's it. So we're up from 4 o'clock in the morning, and then that's for the rest of the day. So no, I don't look 25. I was 42 in June, so I am currently 42 years old. Or young, I guess. Right, let me get back up through these. Oh, man, there's so many on YouTube. Seinfeld. See, Seinfeld was never a big thing over in England, so I know that there's those slap bass things on it, but I've never learned any of the licks off Seinfeld. That's one of those things I've never done. I couldn't even sing them to you because I've never really watched it, which I know is sacrilege to a lot of Americans because they don't... it was like big over there, wasn't it? But never was over here. LEDs on the pickups. These tell you whether you've got single coil, split coil, or dual coil. So these are actually quad coil pickups. So there we are, switches. So blue is dual coil. Green is single coil, like jazz pickups. Like the single coils. Red is split coil, like a P bass. So blue is dual coil. Think humbucker like a Music Man. So you can do it with either of them. So you've got a bit of a Christmas tree there. On the Enfield basses that Martin Sims builds, they also have the LEDs down the neck. Just as an example, even though it probably doesn't, you can't hear it that well over the internet. If I was to be playing with, well, here's the single coils. That's, think jazz basses. If I play, let's say I go to the front pickup and play, that's the precision sound. See, that's that solo thing I was talking about. Sugar pie, honey bun. Oh yeah, and if I went for the split coil, that's more that Music Man-y kind of sound. So if I was to put that on the back pickup and then switch. Actually, that's not a good example, is it? If I put it to both like that and then stick it in the middle. That one. So yeah, they're the dual coils. Going to try and transcribe my first song, thinking blues or classic rock. Any advice? Let me think. Classic rock. Well, All Right Now. That's a pretty good one to try. It's fairly easy. There's a little bit of a in the middle. Yeah, All Right Now by Free. Try that one. Try a lot of soul stuff, you know, like that was playing then, with the all that stuff, because you get so many of those licks that are the same in all of them. What's the other one? Oh, like I say, I'm going blank on them now, but yeah, even like that. Coming to you. So like Soul Man, that's again, it's that sixth in there, sixth and fifth. Yeah, Rescue Me. What's the other one? Love Really Hurts Without You, or well, they're all the same. I sounded so Yorkshire, didn't I? Then they're all the same. In an offbeat triplet, what beat do you play the second note on? I guess you've been watching Adam Neely when he's talking about the offbeat quarter note triplet. You don't play it on a beat; it's between beats. The second one. But if you're not talking about the offbeat, well, it's hard to say. I don't know which beat that you're meaning. Are you meaning on a quarter note triplet, or are you meaning an eighth note triplet, or are you meaning a half note triplet? But if you're meaning a quarter note triplet, are you meaning starting on beat 1, or on beat 2, or on the and of either of them? Because that's quite a... That's not that descriptive how you've asked the question. Well, not descriptive enough, if you know what I mean. Let's go down a bit further. GUI tuber, I've been programming since the early 80s myself with Kindred Spirits. Yep. Although, I wouldn't call me a programmer. I've learned a bit of programming. I used to make my own basic games, and that's about it. And a few databases in C, if you can count that, but everybody makes databases in C. It's like the go-to, isn't it, when you first start learning code. I have a jazz performance coming up, and I need to be able to walk over quick and odd chord changes. I'm a bit inexperienced with chord walking improvisation stuff. Any tips? Well, it depends on the chords. But one thing that to bear in mind, well, odd chord changes. So you meaning with weird root movement, or are you meaning odd chord qualities? In terms of chord qualities, you just have to know your chord tone. So even if it was like a B flat 7, sharp 9, flat 9, sharp 5, you just have to know the actual arpeggio. So you start with like that's the B flat 7. If I want to put a flat 9 in it, sharp 9, sharp 11. You end up with the diminished scale we were talking about. But you just have to start thinking in those terms. But one thing I would say is try and simplify it. If you're going to be walking, don't try thinking of all the extensions. Just look at your root note. So look where you're starting from and look where you're going to. So if let's think of, let's say I take a chord progression of something like C major 7 to E flat major 7, right? So we'll do a 1 bar each. So that's a fairly odd kind of chord progression. So if you were playing on the C, you're starting on the C, and you've got to think, I'm going to E flat. So look at where you're coming from and where you're going to. We're going from there to there. So that's a move to begin with, isn't it? So I just start on there. I think, well, I don't want to move too far, because if I go too far up an arpeggio, I'm gonna go past the E flat. So I just think, okay, well, I'll try and hang around that C there. So use a few chord tones, so I can go down to the 7th. If I do that, and then I think, okay, well, I've got one beat left to get to the E flat. That D works fine. You know, and then I can just come up the E flat major 7, and then, you know, and you just sort of navigate your way through the chord progression and the harmonic landscape with the using your chord tones as a kind of guide, as a waypoints in all of that. But a lot of it comes down to options that you have and decisions that you make. You think, do I go up or do I go down? Because that's your first thing right there. So if you're going from C to E flat and you're thinking, okay, well, I'm going to go up. Well, you're going to go up to that E flat. You'll have a problem if you're coming down to an E flat, if you haven't got a 5-string bass, obviously. So you kind of got to think up. But if you were on that C there, you could think up or down. So I could think up to that E flat, or I could think down to that E flat. You know, and you just, again, I'm using the C major 7, C, B, G, and then again, I'm thinking, okay, well, I've got one beat to get to that E flat. Okay, I'll use the F. And then I'm on the E flat. You know, blah, 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 and then just practice the chord progression over and over and over again until you've got a few licks, you know, a few little movements from one note to another just under your fingers. Like when you start learning how to play walking bass lines, everybody learns how to go. You know, because there's so many movements of a perfect fourth. So if I'm going D minor 7 to G7, if I'm doing that everybody does that all the time. You know, and then up again, you know, so it's like root, 3rd, 5th, and then passing note to the next. So, yeah, you just got to think like that. Again, it's just a journey. You're just thinking, where am I and where am I going to? And then you think up or down, and then think, how far do you want to go up or down? But try and keep it simple in terms of the processes that are going through your brain. You don't really want to be thinking too much. You don't want to be, don't get too bogged down in all the, you know, scales and all that kind of stuff. Really break it down to the where you're going. You know, because it's funny, as long as you hit the root notes on one, you could put kind of anything in there. You know, maybe not that, but you know what I mean? You could, as long as you're playing the right note on beat 1, you can sort of move around a little bit and just, you know, say it was a bit of artistic license. You know, just make damn sure that you're hitting the right note on beat 1. And if you are doing something a little bit weird, make sure that you hit the root note on the next one. Don't go for another chord tone. Don't go for a 3rd, a 5th, or a 7th. You know, because you can put 3rds, 5ths, 7ths as your beat 1, but or on the chord change. But you know, if you're really going out there, you know, using weird substitutions and stuff, then you'd want to really hammer that root note, depending on the context, obviously. Right, I'll be finishing up in a second, so I'm just going to very quickly. Let me just switch back. Right, so YouTube just for the last few. Right, I'm down at the bottom. I'm just working through these. What do you prefer, a bass guitar in beginners, jazz or precision bass? Makes no difference. Just go for whichever one. You'll realise that later on, that whether you go for a jazz or a precision, the instrument that you go for is kind of irrelevant, because you'll probably change or get a few others if you stick with it later on. It's not good. Precisions do... Well, a jazz is probably going to be a little bit easier on your fingers to some extent, but that's not necessarily a good thing. You don't necessarily want it. You don't want it to be too easy when you start out. But then again, and I don't mean that a precision is going to be hard. You know, like, oh, it's going to be so hard to play a precision. It's not. It's not like playing upright. You know. But yeah, either one. That was yeah. I'm struggling to count rhythms and play at the same time. Any tips? I've not got time to get into that one. But one thing that is the problem that you've got there, that's Denton Crime Scene. The that name. The problem that you're having is independence, right? So you need to start being able to automate certain parts of your brain, I suppose you'd call it. But you've kind of got three things going on. You've got your playing, which is one thing that you're concentrating on. You've got counting, which could be foot or voice. So I'm tapping my foot there, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. But they're two separate things. You know, my voice and the foot. Because I might not want to put the voice on the same one as a foot. Like the foot might be here, and I might be going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So that doesn't... And like if I'm talking and I'm tapping my foot, I don't necessarily have to talk in time with the foot. You kind of do anyway, but, you know, because of the way that your body works. But, yeah, you don't have to do that. So I would concentrate on getting your foot tapping and just try and keep that consistent while maybe you're talking. Or try playing a bass line while you're doing that. Try also playing to a metronome and tapping your foot along with the metronome and counting the metronome. And then playing with the metronome, so you're playing on the beat, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then try counting, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, something incredibly simple like that, where you're just having to place a note on one of the things that you're saying. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So it's just a case of, do I play with the foot or the voice, or do I not? Then eventually you'll start being able to play 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. See how I'm playing the eighth notes there? So 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, count separate, okay? So it's just a lot of independence exercises. But like I say, I could talk about that for a long time, and I don't have the time. So I might do I'll do a YouTube video devoted to that. You've just inspired me, Denton Crime Scene. What about Yamaha RBX series bass? Yes, they're great. A friend of mine, Dan Francis Owen, he's got one. Dan's got his own set of lessons on YouTube as well. Go check those out. Do you play a double bass? I have done, but I am rubbish. I'm not very good on double bass. I played in a like a Latin kind of bossa kind of band once upon a time doing that, and yeah, not very good. I need to buy one really and play it because they sound so good. A friend of mine used to play. Well, I mean, I know loads of upright players, but there was one guy in particular that he used to have it. He was on a ship actually, and in his cabin he used to have his upright, and I used to go around and. If he started playing, I was like, oh, man, when you're right up close, you know, and listening, I'm thinking, oh, that's a real instrument, not like this thing. It's like listening to a piano or a violin or something like that, not like this thing. I'm a beginning bassist. Do you have any basic slap exercises? I don't have time to do them now, but if you go onto YouTube and just look up my slap bass, go to Talking Bass, go to the lesson map, click on slap, and there are a bunch of beginner slap exercises on there. Any recommendations for short scale bass? I'll tell you one short scale that looks really cool. I've not played it yet, but that's the Scott Whitley series. But I can't remember the make of them now. Scott Whitley's got his own signature basses out. So just look up Scott Whitley short scale. Right. So this is the last few questions I'm going to answer. So I'll just pick some out. There's some good ones. Can you slap on a Rickenbacker? Yeah, you can, but it just doesn't work as well. I'm playing fast lines on the E string. This is Jello hammer. The frets make a lot of noise when I press them down for the note. Is there a solution for this? It's more your transitions from one note to the next that's giving you problems, and that will go after a certain amount of time. Another thing that you have to remember, because I get asked about that all the time, but one of the things that happens is that as you play for a long time, you'll get more control with this hand. You can hear I'm not getting too much of that there, but when you're playing in a band, you don't hear that stuff that much. You know, even if I turn all the treble right up, stuff that you might hear like that when you're just playing on your own, when you actually play in a band, because there's so much, the other instruments like drums and, you know, whatever you're playing with will be taking up a lot of those frequencies in there. So you don't have to worry about that too much. Do you play with a pick sometimes? And if so, can you show us how you hold it? If I was playing it like that. So I've got the hand back here, so you can palm mute just at the end of the bridge. I've got the fingers there, so I'm holding it like that. If you want some good advice on pick playing, Cody Wright or Bobby Vega are the two main guys. I transcribed, if any of you didn't know, I do all the lesson material for Scott's bass lessons. So I was transcribing the course for Cody Wright's course for SBL, and it's really, really cool. You learn some really cool stuff. So go check out Cody. Right, so I'm down at the bottom, and I'll take one more question. Let me just pick one. Every single time I get asked about... Oh, no, it's not that one. No. Right. So, speaking of different strings, do the strings on the Kayla U bass change your possibilities of how you play? Not really. It's a little bit weird, I've got to say. It's a bit of a strange one. But, hold on. Just before we finish, shall I go see if it works? One sec. I don't know if this is going to work. I've not actually tried playing this one through yet. It'll be really out of tune because I've not tuned it up for ages and these strings are terrible for it. But you get the idea. I can't wait to hear what this sounds like on YouTube when I listen to it back. Now, I find that my fingers, because my hands are quite biggish, they're not. I don't have massive hands, but they're fairly big, and I find that getting into that, I really have to look at one finger per fret when I'm playing down there. Oh, it's hard playing it at this angle. So you get that real deep. You know, you get that kind of vibe going on. But they are like plastic. It's like playing a toy. And they feel really weird if you're just used to playing even ground wound or whatever type of tape wound strings or anything like that, this is so different because it's just like playing like plastic tubes, and it's it's weird. That bottom string sounds a bit out of it. Yeah, so you get the idea, but that's that's a Kaylee bass. They're crazy. So anyway, right, so I'll leave it there. So next week, if I do another live stream, I will be sure to send out some notifications, because everybody's been saying, "Oh, you've not given me any notifications." So I will do next time. But like I said, this was a little bit of an off-the-cuff kind of thing. I was just thinking, oh, okay, well, I'll try it out and see how it goes. So yeah, cool. So thanks everybody for coming. So that actually worked. I had 0 dropped frames through the whole thing, so I could potentially do this again where I do it on Facebook and YouTube. But we'll see. Cool. All right then, everybody. So I will hopefully see you next week. And yeah, check out Talkingbass for the like I was saying earlier about the lesson map with the what was it? The categories. Because I didn't realize that some people didn't know about that. You know, about the lesson map. If you're trying to find any of the lessons in there, if you want something to do with slapping or whatever the topic is, go to the lesson map. Check out the little plus signs, click on one of those, and it'll bring them all out. Okay, everybody, I shall hopefully see you all next week. See ya!